Hello and welcome back to the channel and another video about the construction of Heaton Lodge Junction Phase 2. So it's been a week since I last saw you. I spent a few days up at my little hidey hole near Dent Station, which most of you will know on the Settle Carlisle line is the highest mainline station in England. The problem with that is the weather can be absolutely dreadful, and this time it certainly was. Driving rain, howling wind. In fact, it's so high up that you're often in the cloud cover, and for a full 3 days it was in cloud. So seeing as I couldn't see more than 20 metres in front of me, I might as well have been in Bradford. So I came home early and ended up doing a load of ballasting, which is what I'm going to show you in a few minutes. So anyway, I'm digressing. On to today's video. We've got a new clip this week, Book of the Week, which you'll see why I'm including that in a few minutes' time. And yeah, I'm going to update you on progress. What else? Yeah, that's about it really, but hopefully you'll enjoy it. So without further ado, let's crack on. Right, so what has landed since I saw you last week on our little delivery section for this week? Well, basically, probably about 25 metres, I think, of palisade fencing from railway laser lines. This is the security fencing that's going to separate the concrete factory from the main lines and the main lines from the marshalling yards. So a lot of that to put in. I'm going to just be painting this probably with a rattle can to save my airbrush. So I'll prime this first and then I'll spray a silver colour just from a rattle can. I'll be able to show you this in a couple of weeks how it looks, but works out about 6 foot tall. This again is available I think in O gauge, well definitely in O gauge obviously from railway laser lines. I think Steve's doing it in double O gauge as well. So I don't think he'll mind me saying that this is a tad more exciting in terms of what else has landed. This is, wait for it, the last of the 56ers to land, which brings the fleet up to 15 56ers, which is where I always wanted to be. Now this one came from Kerno Models. I think it was the last 56 they had. It was £399, which makes it just about the cheapest 56 in the country. I think even Rails, they've gone back up to about 550 to 580 pounds, I think £575. This one is obviously in the livery which I don't want. Lovely livery if I was still modelling the 1980s, but obviously we've moved on now. So this one is going to end up as a Colas rail freight livery, making two in this new livery. In fact, this is the one I've done earlier. I painted this a few weeks ago, some of you might remember, and I actually made quite a good job of this. Even though I didn't strip it, I just blasted it with the high coat rattle can primer and then painted it these vivid Colas colours. But I think because the colours are so vivid, it's helped disguise the fact I've not stripped it. I have painted the front end. I repainted the front end as well, rather, which is in Phoenix Precision Paints Warning Yellow, and then the Colas colours from the same manufacturer. So that's come out really well. So I'll be adding the glazing and everything else in the next couple of weeks. Well, probably next month or so for that. So this one here will become that. And at 399 quid, it was really, really good value. And I just, yeah, there is a saying that, of course, we can never have enough locos, and it is very true. So anyway, the other one, from Hellion obviously, is, wait for it, you can probably tell by the box, is the last of the Class 60s that I need. And this one came from eBay, £300, which was extremely reasonable. Actually, a chap who just lives around the corner from me, weirdly enough. But yeah, that made it very, very yeah, easy to go and collect. So just round the corner, DB Schenker Class 60. I'll just get it out of the box to show you. I love these Class 60s, always have. Perhaps not quite as much as 56s, but certainly not far off. This one is going to be 6100 or 60100 Midland Railway Butterley. So it's going to stay in DB Schenker livery. I just need to add drivers, weather it. Obviously, it's going to go to Lee's Locos for the DCC fitting. It'll have 2 speakers, one in each end. So it'll make lots of racket, which is what we need. And once it's weathered and it's got the Midland Railway Butterley nameplates, which I've already got from Proto Neo, that should look really good too. They're just so big, aren't they? 60s, way longer than 56s, but I must admit I do prefer the sound from the 56s. So that, ladies and gents, completes our weekly deliveries clip. Oops, before we move on from Locos, forgot to show you, this one has come out really well. I did this one up at Dent, put all the logos on again, simply because I'd stripped this. This is one of the few Locos that I actually stripped down to the old plastic shell using IPA, then put on all the EWS logos, which are from Fox, and it's going to be Charles Francis brush. You might remember I showed you this probably a few months ago now, but originally I'd just blasted it over with high coat primer, but it had not come out too well, probably because I'd not rubbed it down well enough. This time I've stripped it, as I've just said. I've repainted it and it's come out much better. So I've repainted the front ends. Front ends are rail match yellow, and all the other paint is from Phoenix Precision Paints, and you can see the logos on there as well. Again, this is going to be Charles Francis brush, and yeah, this has come out pretty well. The other one, the 56, this isn't a full strip down. This is just a blast with high coat primer. Not as good in terms of finish, but it's good enough because once it's weathered, which these EWS locos are going to be pretty heavily weathered. A lot of them are just going to sit on Healy mills and just be idling and making all sorts of nice noises. So there's all the front end detail to add. The front end was Phoenix Precision Paints, actually. I just did a slightly different shade of warning yellow, and yeah, this has come out. Oops. Bit of glass dropped out there, so I need to put that back in. Crikey. But yeah, there we go. Once it's weathered, should be okay. Okay, folks, let me take you through what I've been doing since I last saw you, and you can sum it up in one word, actually: ballasting. An awful lot of it, and you can see the main boards you're looking at there, and then over to the right you've got the extension carts, which I'm just going to nip under the main boards in a second and just take you through those. But yeah, it's just been a case of using all the ballast I've got. This stuff here, which is still drying, is from Geoscenics. The paint still needs to be applied to the sleepers. What I've actually been doing is not painting the track first, just applying the ballast and then painting the whole lot with the Humbrol Rattle Can Dark Earth, which I showed last week. This, again, is all waiting to dry, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like when it does dry. In fact, no, I'll show you around the other side because I've got the finished article under there. But as I'm working my way through each board, some of you might remember that the automation is going in early next year, and all the wiring that goes with it, I'm having to take all the old wiring out. So if we nip underneath, for those of you that are interested, you can see that all this wiring here I'm having to cut out, and I spent hours connecting all these wires. I know it looks like a rat's nest, but it's all coming out board by board, including all the DCC Concepts point motors. There's nothing wrong with them. They work fine. In fact, they were really reliable on Heaton Lodge Junction Phase 1. It's just that I'm going to be using the new ones that work better with the electronics that's going in to do the automation. So, yeah, so let's nip underneath and I'll show you around the other side. You can see all the way down there. Oh, let's get round. Okay, so we're back on the other side now. This is the ballasting I've just done, and on the extension carts too, I'll come onto this little hillock that I've made out of polystyrene in a minute. This is all, again, you can see the PVA is not dried yet. I've changed the ballast colour here and there just to promote a bit of variety. But if I nip onto the next board that has dried, you can see how good this looks. So this is the track that I have done. It has dried. I've sprayed the sides of the track with just a brown. I don't use rust coloured paint on the sides because it just doesn't look right. If you look on the prototype, it just looks brown. So that's what I've done here, and I've just given it an all over kind of wash with the Humbrol rattle can dark earth again. So that's how all the sidings will appear on Heaton Lodge. You can see the main lines over there. Again, I've just done all that over there, so the track has yet got to be painted, and again, it's all waiting to dry. So there we are. Right, let's nip on to the landscaping. So if we look from this side, just move these around, you can see I've clamped two of these extension boards together, and then I can move them, which is what I'm doing now, and I can work either side of them, which is great. And then when they're ready to be clamped to the side of the main boards, then it all looks like one big layout, which of course it's not really, but it certainly looks like it. Anyway, what I wanted to do here was just introduce a little bit of variety in terms of the ground cover levels. Some of you might remember we made these ponds with casting resin, which is a bit dusty, a few months ago. In fact, probably best part of a year ago now, next to the MGR storage sidings. So again, this is just to really introduce a bit of interest rather than just bog standard grass cover. Done the same in the middle, few puddles there. And then what I did earlier this week was just start to bring the ground level up. I'm only going to do it here. This reminds me of Tyne Yard, actually, or Tees Yard, sorry, where if you're ever travelling over the flyover there, you'll see loads of these kind of little hillocks, which I presume is just earth which has been excavated from when they made the marshalling yard and just dumped in the middle of the track. So this probably looks bigger than it is. It's probably not even 15 foot high in real terms, well, in scale terms. But I'm just going to cover this in static grass in the next clip of the video. And all I've done to make this is simply use polystyrene, a hot knife, and then I've used the usual filler from B&Q or plaster. I've daubed that on, and then when it's all dry, you can see it's still wet actually. I've just painted it in like a greeny colour, greeny brown colour. Now the other thing I've done, and I've talked about this in the past, is I've used pebbles, which you can get from B&Q or Wicks, and I've pushed these into the plaster when it's all drying. And the reason I do that is because it gives these lovely little hillocks, which you'll see in a few minutes, which just look like the tufts you get on embankments and cuttings on all types of railways. So once the grass is grown over there, I'm going to make this a bit threadbare in terms of the grass. There's going to be a lot of bare earth, mud, but there's also going to be grass, but not a massive amount of it. What I'm trying to say is I'm just not going to make it a big green kind of feature. It's just going to be a bit threadbare, mud, stones, all sorts of stuff like that. So that just introduces just a different level, and then it's going to go back down on the next board that I just showed you where I finished the ballasting. It's going to go back down to being on the track level again. Now, on the sides of these storage yards, where the track is very close to the side of the extension carts, I know by bitter experience I've had locos, including Evening Star, fall off baseboards in the past. And here, what I'm going to do is glue on. These are from Railway Laser Lines that Steve did for me from Railway Laser Lines for the flyover. But they come in really useful and look really good on the sides of, well, any part of the railway here. So yeah, they're just going to be hot glued on the side just to keep the trains on the track. But as I've just said, they look really good too. So that is progress, folks. If we just pan across, we're also going to cover this week, I'm going to fill these drainage ditches, which we looked at last week, with the casting resin, which I'm just preparing as we speak. So we're just going to do a bit of casting resin here, probably on one of those for the camera, and then we're going to do a bit of static grass for the how-to this week on the terrain that I've just shown you. So that, folks, is progress this week. Okay, so welcome to my new clip, which is called Book of the Week, where I'm just going to recommend every single week a book which I have personally read from cover to cover and which I can thoroughly recommend for railway modelers. So I hear you all thinking, why is Simon George showing us a book about fish? Because this is not a fishing video. But there's two reasons, to be honest. The first is, to be quite frank, it's written by my sister, Rose George. It's her new book. It was serialised on Radio 4 just last week and in the Sunday Telegraph. And yeah, apparently it's going down a storm. Every Last Fish by Rose George, published by Granta. And to be quite honest, the reason I'm talking about it is not just because of my sister. It's just a really good read if you want something different from railway modelling for a change. But if you don't, then this is the one that I am recommending as our Railway Modeller's Book of the Week this week. And it's by Paul Shannon, who's one of my favourite authors. I say that simply because I love his captions. There is so many captions in this book which are just so informative. It's not just 2 or 3 lines. Basically, a paragraph goes with each photo. So, British Railways Freight Terminals, published by OPC by Paul Shannon. It's £25, but by goodness, is it well worthwhile? And the reason it is because of all the photos that show so many different terminals. So obviously, if you've got a lack of space and you're modelling whichever gauge you're modelling, doesn't matter what gauge it is, NOO, O, Z, whatever, these will give you loads and loads of inspiration to making your own kind of terminus or terminal model. We've got everything from metals in all eras. We've got everything from coal, concrete, which is the reason I bought it in the first place. And when I went up to Dent last week, as I mentioned in the introduction, I sat and read this from cover to cover. I must have read this 4 times, made loads of notes. It's absolutely super. Black and white photos, colour photos, depending on when they were taken, but just well worth the 25 quid because it will occupy your time for at least a few happy days. So that is Book of the Week, Freight Terminals, British Railways Freight Terminals by Paul Shannon, published by OPC and available, I think I got this from Amazon actually, yeah, £25. So yeah, there we go. That is Book of the Week, folks. Okay, so let's get back to the drainage ditches that we were making last week. And I'm just about ready to pour the casting resin in. We'll talk about that in a sec. But just to go through what I've done to prepare for the casting resin. If you look in here, you can see all the detritus that we added last week, including some stones, which I've painted kind of a grey, horrible grey, sandy colour. I've also used quite a lot of this stuff, which is the AK, if I can get it the right way around, AK Terrain's Muddy Ground, which I really like. And I've actually left it wet, as you can see, because I just want to experiment when I pour this casting resin in and see if it kind of lifts it off and mixes it in with the resin, which might give a good effect or it might give an awful effect, but we're going to try and see. I have been around the edges with, just in case, some of this, which is basically some sealant. This is Addy Seal, which you can get from B&Q. It's just like any bathroom sealant because I don't want any disasters. If there was a disaster, I'd be quite happy to show you on video, by the way. But yeah, that's just about done now. We've done the other one next to it, very similar. That's got a water culvert, a pipe culvert, which I got from 10commandments.co.uk. We've got a rubber tyre, drum, old oil drum rather. And as you can see, some of this is still wet. So let's prepare the casting resin and just see how we get on. Now the casting resin, which I'm warming up in this tub, and it is important when you get this resin, this is what I got off Amazon. Just standard epoxy resin. This is by, where are we? Oh, who's this one by? Can't remember. Studio Range, that's right. Studio Range epoxy resin, but there's loads of different makes and it is expensive, so you don't want to be wasting any. This is the main resin, and then we get the hardener, which is next to it, and the ratio is 3 parts of epoxy resin to 1 part of hardener. But I put it in this tub full of kind of not hot but quite warm water, just to make it a lot more kind of liquidy, because when you get it off the shelf it's a bit like syrup. The other thing that I've got, which I like, is the Woodland Scenics tints, which you can add to the resin to make all sorts of different effects. And I always use the murky. They do crystal clear, crystal blue, all sorts of different shades, which might be good for the Canadian Rockies, or certainly rivers in the Canadian Rockies, but they're certainly no good for West Yorkshire or, in fact, most parts of the UK. So the murky, I think, fits in really well. I'm sure it's just emulsion paint, but not to worry, it works with this epoxy resin really well. So I'm going to tip that in a second. I'm just going to put you on, or put the camera on a tripod so you can see if I drop any clangers or if it goes fairly smoothly. Last thing to say, Das clay I've just used around the edges to fill in the gaps between the wall and the baseboard. I'm going to fill these bigger gaps in with just hot glue gun and just some random card. This will all be covered by static grass anyway. And yes, I know somebody pointed out on the video comments the other week, why is all the detritus in the ditch and then the fence is going up, but I figured, well, people still throw stuff over fences, don't they? But this fence by Railway Laser Lines, talked about that earlier, the palisade fencing is going to be going round it once it's all finished. So that is about it for the preparation. Let's move on to tipping in the casting resin. Right, let's have a crack at this. So, all mixed up. There we go, and I'm just going to pour this in quite gently. Hopefully it's not too thick that it'll cover all the ground detritus. What you need to do as well with casting resin is you need to drag the edges right up to the edge. I reckon that is enough. So what I mean by that is you just need to use the edge of a spoon and just bring the edges into the sides like that. That's better. There's probably not enough water tint in there. You should never do this, by the way, but I'm going to have a go. So we're just going to just add a bit more. See what effect this gives us. You've always got to try these things, haven't you? Just to get different effects. Right, put a little bit more at this end. 2 drops. Use the other end of the spoon. Look, at the end of the day, it's swampy water. It's not like Bondi Beach anyway. I don't think you get many people surfing in here. Right, I think that will just about do. Aha, so yeah, what's happening is the resin is taking that AK Interactive muddy terrain off where I've just painted it, off those hillocks, and it's integrating it with the resin. So let's just have a zoom up and just see where we are. You can see when the light's not shining on it, that is looking pretty authentic. All the bubbles in there. To be honest, what I normally do, and I've done this in the past, especially with the river, is you'll often get loads of bubbles in here. When you're pouring the resin, you can easily get rid of those with a lighter, just a cigarette lighter, go around, hold the flame near the bubbles and they pop immediately, and then you get a very, very smooth water. I don't really want that in this. I just want it to look as mucky and horrible as possible, which I think I've achieved. So I'm going to leave all those bubbles, and I think that will look really, really good. So yeah, let's go on to the next one. We might as well do the next one, seeing as you're here. Sorry about the camera work. Just 1 second, and let's just see where we go with this. So we'll just pour in the resin here. Right, there we go. I'm just going to pour in enough to get it to go to the top of the bottom, if that makes sense, of that culvert, which I think we're just about there. The tyres got buried, that's fine. In fact, I'm going to use it all. There we go. That one is a little bit deeper. And as you can see, that'll probably take a couple of days. Might just add a little bit more of the tint in it. Sorry, the light from the camera lights is shining on here. In fact, you know, even doing that makes an interesting effect, doesn't it? But we'll just mix it up with a spoon. I'll be really interested to see what this is like when it's all dry. It will take a couple of days, I've just said. So by next week, I reckon this will all be dry. Okay, so I reckon that will do. So we're going to detail it next week by adding, certainly not some waves, but we're going to add some little bits and pieces I'm going to show you. But I think, folks, that is about it for our water pour, and we will see next week what it looks like. Don't forget, all the sides are going to be grassed. There's going to be reeds and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, I reckon we should be okay with that. Hopefully, I've not looked at the bottom, but it's not pouring out the other end. Let's have a look at it again next week. Right, folks, we're nearly at the end now. We've run out of time, so I'll do the static grass on the hillock I was going through earlier next week. Also, before I forget, haven't managed to answer all the comments on the YouTube video from last week, simply because I've just been away, as you know. So I will get around to doing that, and the ones that come from this video too, of course. Next week, early next week, Tim Horn is coming down here from Norfolk. He's going to help me with the HS3, finding a way really to bolt together the sections and mounting them on the main baseboards, as well as doing the route 50-meter route, that is, where it goes behind the scenes and doubles back on itself, etc., etc. So quite a lot to see next week in next week's video. Thanks again for watching. Nearly at 10,000 subscribers now, thanks to you all. So again, thank you for your interest in watching and supporting these videos. And have a great weekend. I will see you next week.